this is Mary the Literary again, and today I'm going to talk about a 19th century novel called Flatland, which is written by Abbott, Edwin A. Abbott. And I am going to do an analysis on space and authority and the relationship between them using this novel. And this video is inspired by the class that I took this semester, which is called Mathematics and Representation, taught by the wonderful and one and only Professor Andrea Henderson from UCI. It was a pretty interesting class where we combined mathematical concepts with concepts of literature, and I truly learned a lot from this class where I learned to look at a perspective of how mathematical concepts at the time influenced certain literary beliefs or like philosophical beliefs during the time. Yes, and I apologize for speaking a bit softly today because, well, this is 4:30 a.m. here in Korea, and well, it's gonna be like I'm talking to you about a little secret, but well, bear with me. Okay, so Flatland. What Flatland is about, basically. So Flatland is a novel where various shapes are people, basically. So the main character of this novel is a square, and his name is ironically a square, and he probably looks like this. But the problem is, this is the second dimension, so they don't have a sense of up or down, so they don't really know what they look like. If we look at a square right now, we can clearly see a square, but from their perspective, it is as if you're looking at something like this. If you put a square on the table and then you're slowly lowering your eyes, slowly getting to its level, and then it just becomes slightly something like a line, basically. So the most important thing that a square says about the society is how people identify themselves. So it's pretty hard to identify someone if everyone looks like a line, right? So the way they do it is that they use a method called seeing and feeling. And this seeing is the more aristocratic method, where you don't really have to come in contact with a person. You can just like look at the different angles, because sometimes like a square look like this, or a square can look like slightly bit like this, and then you have to figure out if that's a square or another. I feel like I'm drawing this wrong, but so a square might look like this, of a certain sort, and then you have to figure out if it's a square or not. And then by feeling, it means that it's literally different shapes, like a I don't know, triangle, and maybe a square, and then they come in contact with each other physically, and then try to figure out the angles and sides, and try to identify, oh, this is Mr. Square, oh, this is Mr. Triangle, and all that. So the problem is, in this novel, is that you are defined by what shape you are. So in the social hierarchy, the more regular you are, the more higher in society you are. So basically, if you're a square, you're pretty much respected. You're like a lawyer. You're somewhat intellectual. People listen to you. But if you're like a irregular shape that some like looks like this, whatever this is, you are less easy to identify, and therefore you're dangerous. You are outsider, you're not intellectual, you're immoral. Yeah, so there's this whole biopolitical hierarchy going on, because the hierarchy has to do with the people's bodies, and um you know according to your body, you are classified as something that is, or someone that is worthy of living, or just worthy of just being cast aside. So A square talks a lot about sharp shapes, like uh isosceles. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, because I did not learn math in English. Um, but they are square, basically triangles that more or less looks like this, with two um small angles and one big angle. So basically, this is the ultimate um stupid, dangerous, you know, immoral uh shape. And A Square describes that their jobs are mostly confined to like soldiers, not to be offensive to our real soldiers out there, but it's literally because their points are really sharp, and then they can just stab other people. So they are just dangerous rogue beings, according to A Square. And then in the same vein, the way he talks about women in this novel is very interesting. So the women are lines. The women are lines, yes. And they are very dangerous for some reason, because according to A Square, they have the least amount of intellectual capacity, because apparently your intellectual capacity correlates to the amount of sides and angles you have. So the women have no sides, they have no angles. So they're practically like a lesser human being than the men in this story. And then because like, as you can see, very sharp, very sharp. So they are a hazard basically to everyone in society, even their children and husbands. And most houses in Flatland are shaped like a pentacle, like this. And they even have a separate door for men and the women. So this okay. So this would be the men's door, and in the back, maybe like this would be the women's door. So like men and women. Yes. So the women can only enter through this part of the house, in order not to hurt the men in the house. Yes, so there are a lot of rules for women in this society, where they have to constantly wiggle around to indicate that they're coming, because if you look at a woman from Flatland from this side, all you're going to see from the perspective of the um, inhabitants of Flatland, you're just gonna see like this. Like that's it. That's the only thing that you're gonna see, because you're in a two-dimensional setting, and then you're looking at her from the front, and she's just a dot, and you might miss her, and she might just collide into you and like stab you, right? So the uh it is kind of like an unwritten law that women have to move around when they walk. I'm not sure what he meant by this, but I think he means something like, hold on, let me just try to, okay, not like this, but more of a okay, more like they have to move like this, move their butt from like side to side, so that they're not just a dot, but they're just like this all the time, with like a little dot. Yeah. So there, I'm just like trying to capture the movements of the women, and then there's like a certain style of movement for, certain types of women. Like if a woman is an aristocrat, there's like a stylistic movement that she does, and then lower class follows her. It's like, Victorian fashion all over again. Yeah, and I just found it really funny how A Square was writing about women as if they were natural disasters. Yeah, like, oh, you don't know when a woman will come out of the blue and, like, strike you and um, stab you and kill you and because of this, a lot of women are just confined to their homes, and then they just go crazy, and then they end up being caught up in quote unquote hysteria, and end up killing all their children and husbands. Yeah, so there's a lot of misogyny going on in this narrative of A Square, but I just thought it was an interesting thing that the women are lines and men are shapes, because frankly speaking, how would reproduction work? Because I just found it really funny that the women are the one that is penetrating the man, and men have a fear of penetration instead of like the other way around, which is, in today's society, in our society. Yeah, so that was a chapter on women, and there's something called, another interesting thing about this book is that it's not like a linear story. For the most of the book, it's more like a guide to Flatland, and um, A Square talks about a lot of different things that happen at Flatland, and one of the things I found it really interesting was called the Color Revolution, or um, or I think it was more of a color bill, where the revolution led to the legislation of banning color. Um, yes, obviously Abbott is British, so he would have spelled color differently, but bear with me. So the color thing started. No one knows how the color thing started. It's just described as this some fad that started where one person decided to paint their edges. For example, if you're like a triangle, you would not simply be a triangle, but you would be like a red here on the side, blue here on the side, or yellow on the side, and then you'd be a very very colorful triangle, right? And And then once someone started doing this, everyone started doing this, because it is a lot easier than trying to see or identify, sorry, see or feel that person in order to identify them. Because you can obviously, like, even if you're in a two-dimensional world, you can see um a blue line coming through, and then be like, oh, this is Mr. Triangle, who likes to paint himself blue, red, and yellow, right? So, you can just say hi. Um, yeah, so basically, the color thing was the ultimate solution to the very meticulous process of trying to identify each other, and trying to not get in each other's way by not knowing where they are. And well, there were several problems with this. Okay, so the first problem, I'm gonna go to a new page. Okay, so the first problem: priests and women can't color themselves. See, okay, so I kind of forgot to mention that the priests are a circle. Okay, yay, a circle, because as I said, in Flatland, the more angles and sides you have, the higher the being you are, and then the circle is the ultimate being, because you know how the circle is made of multiple, like, infinite size and angles. So like that is apparently the realm of God, right? And then the women, they're lines, right? And yeah, they can't color themselves because you need a side. You need like an identifiable side in order to color yourself. So everyone was coloring themselves, but the priests and the women, they look the same, which are very, very ironic because now the highest being of the hierarchy and the lowest being of the hierarchy are practically, they look the same. Yeah, how crazy is that? In the society that's crazy about identification. So, um, so the people were like, oh, priests and women should also color themselves. And then, ironically, they said that both of them have to be colored red and green, like red on one side and green on one side. So a circle would look more like this. I don't know if this looks green. Yeah, like a circle would look like this, and a woman would look like this, right? Um, and yeah, so if you were a Flatlander, and you were seeing a priest from this side, and a woman from this side, you would basically see the same thing. So the women were really excited. They were like, "Oh, we can act like priests now. We can just be priests and be treated the same." Before they find out that they were not priests. So this was what was bothering the people. And the second thing that people were bothered about is that irregular shapes. Excuse my handwriting. Irregular shapes can lie about their regularity because like before, when we were seeing and feeling each other, they were under further scrutiny, right? Yeah, you could actually like feel the irregular shape, and be like, oh wait, you're not regular, and then treat him very badly. But now, even if you were slightly like not a square, you could still just paint yourself like a square, like paint yourself like a square, happy square, but irregular, right? And a square goes very dramatic in saying that, oh, there was this woman who thought like a regular shape, like an irregular shape was a regular one, and then she married him, and then she found out he was not, and then she was so humiliated that she committed suicide. Yeah, so the color thing got banned. So coloring yourself, illegal. And A Square also said that the third problem with this thing is that the humanities, like the study of humanities, would diminish. And by study of humanities, he means the art of seeing and feeling, which to me feels a bit iffy because you know how seeing and feeling are supposed to be like very elaborate and very difficult things to do, and they have a very easy solution of just coloring themselves. I feel like the quote unquote humanities in this world exists only to preserve the hierarchy. It exists to preserve the social order that everyone is under, so that making it harder to identify oneself, identify each other, and then having to know how to see and feel being essential of being an intellectual just reinforces the system of uh just just focusing on the body, like what do you look like, what kind of shape are you, and then just categorizing each other into this hierarchy. Yeah, so the humanities exists in order to uphold the social order. I think as a humanities student, I think I would have to, I wish it is, um, it is just a case of Flatland that this is happening. I don't believe that the humanities would be doing that here in the real world, but, anyway, the humanities in Flatland are being used to uphold a social hierarchy. Yes. Okay, so after all this, there's like a part 2 where A Square dreams about lesser dimensions such as Lineland and Pointland. Excuse me. Lineland and Pointland. So as you can probably conjecture from what we've been talking about, Lineland just look like this. And, their inhabitants are here, 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 and here. And that's the king. And Pointland is just that. And this is the ultimate being, king, god, whatever, the point, it can't move, it can just think, it thinks it's a universe. So once the square visits, he mistakes the king of Lineland as being a woman because, everyone are lines. I sort of misdrew this diagram because, like, they look like points right now, but I'm just trying to like make a point that, like this is a person, this is a person, this is a person, this is a person. Yeah. So when A Square visits, him and the king have like various misunderstandings where the square thinks that the king is a woman, and then the king like denies the existence of A Square because like he keeps disappearing, because like if you have a line and then if you have a square over here, people on the line can see the square, but if suddenly the square wants to go here, no one can see the square. It's just a line, because this line is the entire universe for people in Lineland. So this dream sort of points out to A Square about how knowledge can be limited in certain societies and certain dimensions just because they don't know any better. And it's the same in Pointland as well. The square's standing right over here, but the Pointland can't. But the point can't see it. So when Square tries to talk to him, the point is like, oh, this is it's like an external thought. Like this, everything the square is saying translates to what the point is thinking. So it's like rejoicing about the fact that it's thinking of such elaborate things when it's actually A Square kind of talking to him. Yeah, so here you can really see how space limits knowledge. Space limits knowledge. Yeah, the lack of space sort of points to the fact that you kind of get less access to what's out there. And A Square sort of gets aware of that. But then, the most strangest things happen where a sphere from Spaceland visits A Square. Right. So, sphere. visits, I will draw a square like this, because that's what he really looks like to the sphere. Yeah. So they're on this 2-dimensional frame, and it's the same thing. If the sphere goes down, it looks like it's kind of, it looks like a ghost, where it's kind of sinking down onto the floor. And then if he levitates, the square can't see him. It's the same thing where the king of Lineland experienced when a square was there. And this sphere sort of takes Square to Spaceland, and that's where he learns. That's where he gets his epiphany. That's where he's like, oh, this is not what we all know. This is not the extent of our knowledge. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm coming to my main point, where I'm going to talk about space and authority. But we are going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back. Okay, so welcome back. I hope you had a glass of water and some time to stretch. I did definitely have a glass of water. I do not know how the professors do it for 3 hours. It is physically exhausting, but anyway. Right, so the space and authority. The sovereign not only defines the people, but it also defines the episteme of the world. What that means is that, if you remember Lineland or Pointland, let's do Pointland just to make things simple. So this is Pointland, and this is the sovereign, and it defines the episteme of the world. And for those of you who don't know the definition of episteme, this is basically the extent of knowledge there is in the entire world. Yeah, so all of the knowledge that we have right now in the world is the episteme. Right. And in Flatland, and Pointland, more specifically, the sovereign defines it, because all of its subjects are under his rule of what counts as truth and not truth. Yes, and here is where I would like to draw a connection between this concept and biopolitics, because in biopolitics it is also the sovereign's job to define who gets to live and who gets to die. Like who is a worthy person and who is not. And and it's the same thing as well, where the sovereign gets to decide where the knowledge begins and ends in the case of Flatland. Okay, so space here can be defined as a metaphorical concept and a literal concept associated with power. So in the case of Flatland, the inhabitants literally lack the space that they live in, because they live in a 2-dimensional surface, right? And in the metaphorical sense, the idea of space is related to the epistemic knowledge contained within the society. So in short, space is both the boundaries in which knowledge is contained and where the people are contained. And therefore, we can establish that the sovereign not only defines and controls the individuals, but also the space they occupy. And it means that they're also in charge of what they think, as well as what they do. But the thing about Flatland is that Flatland, the country, not the novel, is that unlike Pointland or Lineland, where there's a actual sovereign doing this, in the case of Flatland, oh, it's the wrong color. Flatland is a disciplinary society. So what that means is that even without like a clear sovereign or a clear ruler enforcing everyone, it's his own rule. Instead of this, everyone has embodied the rule, the one and only ultimate rule within their lives. So there is no need for a sovereign to, tell them to do this, do that. They are already doing it, and it is very clear because everyone in Flatland seems to acknowledge the fact that there is a law of nature that they must follow, and this law of nature defines. This law of nature has to do with like what kind of shape they are. And that decides the hierarchy. And no one seems to feel like this is unfair. So, Flatland is a disciplined society where, the definition of self is self-applied instead of being defined by an external sovereign, and the universal rule is the invisible sovereign. Yes. Yeah, and then their perceptions are limited to the space they live in. So that's what I meant when I said that there is a relationship between space and authority. And it stems from the same logic of biopolitical rule, where some things are defined by the sovereign, and then it has an impact on the entire society. I'm not sure if I'm making a lot of sense over here because, well, to be honest, the paper is not finished, but I'm working on it. But this video has given me opportunities to think about how I am to go about this very philosophical argument about space and authority. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now, and I hope to update you on this topic with a paper or, a more, maybe a part 2 of this video. I don't know. But yeah, thanks for listening, and have a nice day. Bye.